Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans podcast. This is episode 37, and I'm your host, Justin Woods, and I'm followed today by my fellow co hosts, Colum Coleman and Aaron Gilpin. And today we are having a bit of an internal uprising, a change of scenery, a battle of wits and writs. Or
That
maybe
is
we
not
just.
what's happening at all. We are back once again to our favorite punching bag, the British Empire.
It's
uh,
like a
t-
comfort thing
oh,
at this point.
yeah. Today we are going to get to watch the English fight themselves, as our subject is none other than the Cromwell Uprising. That's not its actual name, but that's what we're calling this horrible cache of historical events.
Well,
The
we get to
English fighting each other? That's never happened before, right?
and we get to talk about one of the most ooh beloved
What,
former
what,
rulers.
well, let's just say it's England's only head of state that didn't wear a crown.
And
Well,
lost his head.
yeah, I was gonna say. Well, he's not gonna find it. I'll tell you that much.
Not for
Yeah.
about 3 centuries.
All right, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're getting to the end. Let's start. Let's start right off today. Nice. So we're going to begin with the life of Oliver Cromwell here. Now, the first thing you
Boo.
need to know about Oliver Cromwell, and probably the only thing that ever really mattered to him in his life, is that he was a devout Puritan.
Gross.
Ooh.
This is somewhat problematic. He's a devout Puritan of the early to mid 17th century. So this is a time during which the English in terms of God and church and religion are in a bit of a transition phase. They've removed they've removed themselves from the Catholic Church to form the Church of England, and this has led to a number of splinter groups. One of these being the Puritans, who believe that any semblance of the Catholic Church in terms of ritual or existence or acknowledgement is inherently sinful and must be purged from this earth at all costs. As you can imagine, this tolerant view is going to lead him into conflict with a nation that supposedly rules Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales. A unified monolith of people.
Let's see how this one
Puritans.
goes.
Just in case anyone needs a quick refresher on who the Puritans are, remember, think American Thanksgiving, and remember that they all almost died horribly for their hubris.
Oh no, just remember the definition of the word puritanical. We get it from them.
Yeah,
It is an absolutism with no boundaries.
They also hated Christmas.
Yeah,
they
hit 'em.
really hated Christmas. Fun fact, or is it in here already, Colum?
I don't know.
Probably
I
not
don't
So
about
know.
Puritans.
Cromwell
Read your
got rid
mind.
of Christmas.
Oh no, that is not in here. No, I did
Yeah.
not make him down as the man who canceled Christmas.
Yeah, no. If there's
I
bad things he
focused.
did.
I focused more on the political and military atrocities.
Although,
Hey,
to be fair, I feel
canceling
like
Christmas
most.
is very important.
I also feel like most retail workers might have actually voted for Cromwell on that fact alone.
Yeah.
No
But,
Christmas, no
anyway,
holidays.
Anyway, Cromwell begins his career when he's elected to Parliament in 1628 with his most deeply cherished belief, very common among the Puritans, being that England needs to be purged of any influence of Catholicism. Fun fact, at the time he's elected to Parliament, that includes the sitting Queen of England, as the wife of Charles I was a Catholic.
Also,
So,
I think we should also give the dates of his life if we haven't already.
all right, we have not given the dates of his life.
Cromwell was born on April 25th, 1599. So quite a while ago, and he died on September 3rd, 1658, at the ripe old age of 59 years old.
He was an Aries.
Yep. So now you might be thinking, all right, he's in Parliament, right? 1628, he's in Parliament. This is where he's going to do most of his work. You are wrong. In 1629, Charles disbands Parliament, as was technically his right as King of England, to begin his 11-year reign, which is known alternatively as the personal rule and the 11-year tyranny, depending on whose side you were on. So almost as soon as he gets power, he loses it thanks to the King of England, strike two, against the monarchy for him. And to put it bluntly, his time as a private citizen does not go well. His confrontational nature results in him losing most of his family's land holdings in a dispute with local authorities from the province he was supposed to represent in Parliament in 1631. Meaning that for, established landed gentry of England, this is a pretty big blow. So he's lost a lot of prestige thanks to this personal rule.
Wow.
Wait, so he just got in a lot of trouble, and as punishment, they just took his land?
Basically, he got himself involved in a lawsuit, lost, and was forced and had a number of his lands confiscated as payments.
I didn't know they could do that. Jeez.
Well, again, can we please refer to what this time was referred to?
This was the 11-year tyranny. However, it wasn't Charles's government he was fighting, but rather the people he was supposed to represent in Parliament.
Oh.
So it was his own county that took the lands away from him.
You know what? I'm okay with this now. I'm okay with it.
He gets treated repeatedly for melancholy. This is what they referred to as this is what depression was referred to as for most
good
of
old
history.
melancholy.
And that is the only sympathetic fact you will ever hear about this man.
What do you mean? He's not special. We all have depression.
Yes,
Yeah, pretty sure all three of us
sympathetic
do.
means something you can relate to. All right,
Wow.
you can relate to someone with depression.
You're not special,
You can
Oliver.
feel bad for them and emphasize and want to help. Crush that, take that instinct and crush it in the palm of your hand, because this man is about to prove that he deserves every bit of sadness in his life.
Wow, we're really just three depressed guys with a podcast, huh?
Yes,
Is that not most of historians?
Stop.
Imagine Cromwell with a podcast.
Oh no!
He doesn't have a podcast. He's just Joe Rogan.
Oh,
Gonna Joe Rogan it.
You know what? He would be the Joe Rogan of his time. Just like talking about women not wearing scandalous clothing.
All right,
and...
with the hot takes.
Let's get to why our audience hasn't gotten to hear why they should hate him yet.
Yeah, one of us is passionate about history. We need to pursue it.
Do not stop quoting the comments section at me.
Wait, so what? That was a
We don't keep Aaron in the loop on those all the time. And it's
I just saw one that told Justin to shave his face.
Yeah, there's way too many of those.
Yeah. Listen, my family is strictly anti-beard. I can't control them.
Wow.
But anyway, he returns to Parliament in 1640 at the end of, Charles's personal rule. And Charles has reconvened Parliament so that he can fund a rebellion in Scotland. Charles's efforts against the Scots not particularly inspiring confidence in him as a military leader, and all the discontent that has built up over the 11-year tyranny, aka the personal rule, spills over in 1642 when how should I put this? Parliament goes into open rebellion against Charles I, during which point Oliver Cromwell becomes the military leader of their new model army, which was a new way of organizing their military, because at the start of this war, both sides had absolutely zero logistical planning behind either of them. This meant that you had men showing up without weapons, weapons showing up without food, and food showing up to places where there were no people.
Wait, weapons showing up without food? How could they?
Yep. You could not get anything anywhere. It's literally the fox, the chicken, and the grain problem, but on a scale of thousands of people.
That's insane.
I can't imagine what a disorganized army attempting to go to war would end up like.
I can't imagine that either. It hasn't happened in our time at all. Nowhere. Anyway, this was called the First English Civil War because apparently the English can't count.
I believe the English like to participate in what is known as selective history or alternative history.
That's why most of them don't know about the bad shit they did.
Yeah, but
are we the baddies?
Cromwell wins key victories against Charles I in 1642 at both the Battle of Edgehill and in East Anglia. By 1644, he holds the rank of lieutenant general, and in 1645, he wins the battles of Naseby and Langsport. All of these are key battles. The last two actually secure victory for the parliamentary forces against the king. So Oliver Cromwell literally is the man who leads the army to victory against Charles I.
Cromwell.
However, if you think Cromwell is just your typical, political military leader, I would like to inform you all that at the fortress of Basinghouse, he slaughtered the garrison of 100 soldiers, all surrendered to him, and he slaughtered them all because it was a Catholic garrison.
You really can't defend. So he basically is like every other military political figure.
If you think he's earning, well, let me tell you about this. And like, there you go. He massacred a surrendered army on the basis of religion. All right. Now, I know the Geneva Conventions don't exist, and the concept of a war crime is heavily anachronistic to this man.
But I think it might have been considered a war, just a little.
Just considering the amorality still applies here.
You don't tend to slaughter 100 captured soldiers. If they surrender, you tend to just hold them.
Oh, he gets worse.
I mean, like,
this is a preview of later atrocities.
There's not a lot going for Puritans at this point. One of their big head honchos committed war crimes.
Okay, but are we
treason?
Yeah. Continue. You made the comment about Thanksgiving, and we know the atrocities linked with that.
Yeah, but
they're not. It's not looking good for the Puritans, guys.
Anyway, in 46, the Puritans' luck is holding strong. King Charles surrenders, and this leads to a 2-year peace, where from 46 to 48, both the Loyalists and the parliamentarians sort of come together and try and work out a new government while King Charles is in prison. It doesn't go well. Negotiations collapse in 1648, which leads to the Second English Civil War, during which point Scotland sides with King Charles. Now, the ironic thing about this is Scotland going to war against King Charles is what gave Parliament the opportunity to start the First Civil War. So now they're going to war on behalf of the man who they rebelled against 8 years prior. Politics be confusing. This is because the Loyalists had made a deal with the Scottish to grant Scotland religious tolerance under the Church of England in exchange for backing them.
That's a pretty solid trade-off, I think.
Yeah.
We've seen what religious tolerance looks like.
Yeah.
But also to have the Scots on your side, that's a valuable...
Yeah. Anyway, Cromwell personally leads the Loyalist forces to crush personally leads parliamentary forces to crush Scotland's Loyalists. When he does so, the speeches he gives become incredibly religious, and he begins to speak of his own divine providence and how he is acting God's will and is God's tool, and God speaks through him, and all he does is holy.
I love how God becomes a really great tool for people aspiring for power. God told me to do it. God's speaking through me. You got to listen to me because God's...
I'm getting like flashbacks from the Mist movie that I just watched over the weekend.
Yes. The crazy woman in the Mist, the religious element, that is exactly Cromwell's personality at this stage.
Yeah, that's exactly the vibe I was getting, and I'm like, ooh.
Fun fact, because you mentioned how good it is to have the Scots on your side. Justin.
Yeah.
It comes up a little later in the notes, and when we go to recap this more historically, lens. But after he annihilates the first Scottish army, Scotland doesn't surrender, but instead forms a second, more powerful army, and immediately puts a blitz on London.
Ah, yes!
They are defeated before they can reach it, but they push into England, William Wallace style, deciding that we're not fighting in our own country, we're fighting in theirs.
Yes!
They really said, I didn't hear no bell.
The Scottish pride in me is coursing through these veins. We will go to you.
And the reason they did that is because the reason Charles lost the first English Civil War was because the parliamentarians controlled the capital and the ports. And if you held, and it was believed that if you could hold the symbol of government in, the British Isles, i.e. London, that support for Parliament would dissipate. They would look weak and they'd lose a lot of their soldiers. Fortunately, that theory never really gets to be put to the test. And Charles is voted to be executed in 1648, and Oliver Cromwell is the third man to sign the document. He's the third man to sign the execution papers.
Interesting. Who do we know who the first two were?
No, I did not get that, but if I had to hazard a guess, I would say one of them was most likely a man named oh, excuse me there. Well, I'm losing the names in the wall of text I have created. I apologize.
Okay.
But a man named, I would have to say, Thomas Pride, seeing as how it is at about this time that Thomas Pride commits what is known as Pride's Purge, which is where he arrests and or kills every member of Parliament who is not a parliamentarian.
Wow.
Oof.
Fun fact, Pride held the rank of colonel. Cromwell held the rank of lieutenant general. So who gave orders to who? Colonel, then lieutenant general.
I understand what you're hinting at. I think. I believe there seems to be some sort of social hierarchy, some stratigraphy.
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
I can't seem to...
military hierarchy going on here.
Who could have possibly given orders for such a crime?
Who would have executed Order 66 like that? I don't know.
You would have to be some sort of sadistic, sick person. I mean, kind of like that guy who slaughtered 100 captured soldiers.
Yep.
Or the guy who killed a bunch of children in a temple.
Yep. Listen, Annie. Yeah. If you thought Cromwell had been bad, now it gets worse, because executing the King of England, really surprisingly, pisses off the Irish, and the Irish go into open rebellion.
Wait, what?
Charles had the support of the Irish because his wife because the Queen was Catholic. And that meant that when Charles's government performed religious reforms, the Catholics, while not a protected class by any means, weren't directly targeted. So killing him incites the Irish, which prompts Cromwell to lead the invasion of Ireland in 1649. Loyalists had fled England and formed an alliance with the Irish Catholics. And very quickly, Cromwell seizes two key cities, Drogheda and Wexford. In Drogheda, he executes 3,500 people. 2,700 were surrendered loyalist soldiers. So again, killing surrendered soldiers. And 800 were civilians, primarily priests. He targeted the clergy because the clergy is Catholic and therefore evil. He targeted priests. That is something you do not do. All right, they're the one demographic guaranteed to be unarmed and non-hostile.
Oh, gee. You know how we talked about those war crimes is massacring religious opponents unarmed religious opponents.
Yep. In a surrendered town.
I'm starting to think that this may not have been a good person.
Yeah.
This is like giving.
Yeah. Let me put it to you
James
this
Bond
way.
vibes.
Let me put it to you this way. What, and this is definitely for the big history nerds in the crowd here. What Cromwell does at Drogheda makes Lindisfarne look nice.
Ooh.
Oh,
And that's my hot take. You can argue with me about that all you want.
yeah,
But yeah.
Except somehow I think the next thing that he did is just a little bit worse given its implications.
Yeah. Would that be what he does at Wexford, where he sacks the city and kills 1,500 civilians while the city is under truce with him? Wexford had sent out men to negotiate a ceasefire. He agreed. They opened their gates and he murdered them.
Maybe 3 centuries wasn't enough for him to be separated from his head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he could have gone.
Let's try and pull some positives here, okay? He may have slaughtered a village. He may have committed a bunch of crimes with attacking truce, but it's not like he could have possibly done something stupid and tried to outlaw Catholicism.
Yeah. I mean, the war is over, right?
Yeah.
More or less over. So let's see what he does when he's not using a military.
Okay.
First thing he does is he bans the practice of Catholicism.
Oh, come
on! And the second thing he does is has all lands owned by Catholics seized and given to Protestant Englishmen.
I see where this is going, especially for Ireland.
Yeah, I'm from Ireland too. So if those of you who watch us regularly may recall a certain episode, number 33, the Potato Blight, where we talked about how there were certain laws and economic conditions imposed on Ireland by England for the purposes of disenfranchising the Irish. This is those laws. This is the man who wrote the first of those laws.
If any of you out there,
they do not get repealed when he loses control of the government. They just add more.
I love how the English went, yeah, that's all right. He's got some good ideas. Let's just.
If anyone's interested in a song that's kind of about the people who were forced out of Ireland during this time, listen to the song "Tobacco Island" by Flogging Molly. It's a great song.
Here we go.
Jeez.
So Cromwell leaves Ireland now, even though fighting continues till 1652. In 1650, he is called back to England because he must once again fight the Scots. Because Charles II, son of Charles I, has rallied an army to avenge the death of his father in Scotland, which is soundly defeated at the Battle of Dundee.
Dundee.
Fun fact, since we're recommending songs here, there is a song called The Ghosts of Culloden that is about this war, in which everyone dies. It's The Ghosts of Culloden fighting.
Who's that one by? That one sounds like it'd be fun.
It's an old, I think it's like this very old folk song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's very sad. It's like a funeral dirge for obvious reasons. Parliament reformed in 1651 because, of course, it technically, doesn't really exist after you execute about half the membership.
Not to mention execute the king. We kind of
could have read the side.
Yeah. During this time, Oliver Cromwell decides to show the English how he will govern England, and that is by pushing Parliament to have new elections and establish a united government over England, Scotland, and Ireland. No more of this, joint crown, mixology bullshit, but have, a single man rule, a single government over the entirety of the British Isles. He then forcibly disbands Parliament the second any member voices a complaint about this demand.
Sir, it's over. Everyone go home. You've been
Parliament is gone.
dismissed.
Sorry, Lord Cromwell. These biscuits are a bit dry. That's it. Parliament dismissed.
At the same time, he gets a new constitution under a fellow parliamentary military officer, and most definitely not his friend, putting him in a position of power for life, John Lambert, who creates a new constitution for the government of England that declares Oliver Cromwell Lord Protector for life. This makes him the absolute divine right monarch of England without calling him the absolute divine right monarch of England.
So would this technically classify as like God, like a somewhat kleptocratic government? Because straight up just.
Let me
But
put you this
nepo,
way.
is it like nepo kleptocratic?
I don't fully know, but basically think
It reminds
Julius
me.
Caesar being nearly being crowned king of Rome and instead declaring himself emperor and Caesar.
Well, so it also low key definitely like along that same vein reminds me of how Augustus was like, no, 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 I'm not king, I'm not emperor. I'm first among citizens.
Yeah, it's the yeah, it's that, and he does it several more times because in 1655 he disbands Parliament because Parliament, under the powers of Parliament in his new constitution, began to debate constitutional reforms, which was technically its right. However, any reform to the Constitution would mean a loss in power for Cromwell. So government disbanded again. Yep. This is the same thing that he hated Charles I for doing. Because remember, Charles I disbanded Parliament for 11 years right after he got elected, and he hated him for it.
Remember, it's okay when he does it, but when someone else does it, then it's bad.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah,
Typical Puritan.
Anyway, in 1657, he instates what's known as the Second Protectorate Parliament, which, having read the writing on the wall, offers to just crown him King of England and be done with this bullshit, to which he humbly refuses and instead forces Parliament to declare him Lord Protector for life a second time, as a show of loyalty, like any sane, stable, democratic leader would do.
And he lived a long and wholesome life as ruler over the kingdom and lasted many, many decades until he died of old age.
Well, he technically dies of about old age because in the very next year, at the age of 59, he keels over from kidney disease.
Good.
Oh,
because
good.
God's going to cut you down.
I think that
No
was
one else will.
predetermined.
I think God might have been angry.
Yeah.
God was just like, hey, you know how you like predestination? Guess what, motherfucker?
I gotta
You can run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. But sooner or later, God's going to
I think predestination only existed just for Cromwell.
Yeah.
Just so he could be destined for hell. Like, that's got to be the only reason for that, because that man was a true embodiment of, like, fanatical evil.
Yep. Well, he does have, even in death, he gives one final testament to his humility and charitability, in that he orders his body interred at Westminster Abbey. The resting place of the kings and queens of England.
Jesus fucking Christ.
It remains there until 1661, at which point it is ripped out of its grave, torn apart, and its head is chucked on a spike and put on display outside Westminster Hall.
I am not normally for desecration of a body. However, this is my exception.
I could be amenable to it.
Yeah.
Is it still technically wrong? Yes. However, I totally understand.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to look the other way.
Oh, God. Yeah. And now some of you might be wondering, but in 1658, things were going so well. He had all the power. What could have happened in 3 years? Well, turns out not being declared king makes it really hard for your kid to take over your job. And Richard Cromwell, immediately upon the death of his father, assumes the post of Lord Protector in 1658. as you do in a heretical monarchy.
So, question for you, real quick.
Military monarchy, I should say. Yep.
Now, which one's the Dick Cromwell? Because you got Richard Cromwell, and then you've got
I believe Richard Cromwell is Oliver's ancestors from about 100, 150 years earlier. There is a Richard. I believe there is a Richard Cromwell.
Okay, I thought that's his son's name. On the notes, you have it as that.
Oh yeah, there is. Oh, yes, there is. There are a couple actually. But to be fair, yes, there is Richard, son of Oliver, too. Yes.
So which one's the Dick Cromwell?
We're not getting into that. His best friend Morty.
Morty.
Anyway,
grandson.
Morty, come on, let's just overthrow the king, Morty. Get it out, 20-minute adventure,
not overthrow
Morty.
the King of England. That's going to be an episode now. That's got to be an episode on that show now. His coronation's coming up for Charlie 3. But
Morty, do you want to play the best joke ever?
Oh no. Okay. Anyways, before we get copyrighted,
yes. Anyway, Richard has none of his father's ability. Now, that's not to say he wasn't, potentially a megalomaniac, war criminal on hell bent on world domination. However, thanks to his father and thanks to himself being a nobody for most of this time, he has neither the support of Parliament, which hates the Lord Protector at this point, nor the support of the military, which his father ran. And he is pretty quickly forced out of the government by both of these forces, who put in his place a man named George Monk, misspelled in a way only the English can.
Oh.
And under Monk, which for every reason has CK at the end and drives me up a wall every time, Parliament reestablishes the monarchy under Charles XII, or Charles II. I want to call him the 12th because I see the double 2. I see the doubles, and I want to call it the 12th. I want time travel, okay?
We barely just are now getting Charlie 3. Let's stick with Charlie 2 for a little bit.
Yeah, see how we get Charlie 2 Electric Boogaloo in 1660. Because everyone kind of has no real way to go about how do we get this back. This begins what is known as the English Reformation under Charles II, during which time it becomes illegal for anyone who is Catholic to inherit the throne of England. Because religious discrimination needs to be codified at every level of the government.
If only that was a problem of the past.
Yeah. Yes. Here's to you, every job interview that asks me, what do I do on Sunday? Here's to you.
Would you like to know whether by...
All right, so
simple. I call up my lawyer friend and ask him and talk to him about all the potentially illegal questions I was asked at job interviews.
So before we have a few labor lawsuits, let's continue on. So the Cromwell Uprising.
Yes, all right. So this is the much more meatier, in-depth version of the actual politics that was happening, as opposed to just the life of Oliver Cromwell, which is a rapid-fire hellstorm in of itself. Oh God.
As you can see, we are a podcast who loves and supports the former leader of the Great British Isles.
So we love this. Yeah, we definitely love this man. It's the most interesting man in the world to pose. I don't always support the English, but when I do, Oliver Cromwell's involved.
Wait, no, that's not a good thing. You're not supposed to support Cromwell in England.
Well, should I say English crown instead? I don't know. It's hard to pick someone who's not a bad guy at this phase.
Honestly, it's the lesser two evils, much like some of our elections.
Honestly, I feel like that's the Irish position. I don't always support the King of England, but when I do, Oliver Cromwell's involved.
Okay, yeah, we'll take the Irish view. I'm okay with that.
That was the Irish position for most of this, but yes. So the Cromwell Uprising encompasses what was known as the English Civil Wars, or the Great Rebellion, or as it's also known, the War of the Three Kingdoms. because apparently every nation needs a three kingdoms period.
Hey, that's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. It begins with the personal rule of Charles I, which lasts from 1629 to 1640. I'm just going to go through all the dates, I guess. Then there's the Bishops' War from 1640 to 1642. This is Charles I getting his ass handed to him in Scotland, trying to put down the Scottish rebellion against his personal rule.
Can't put the Scots down for long, I'll tell you that much.
Then there's the English Civil Wars, which are 1642 to 1651, during which point Parliament rebels against the Crown of England and has to put out that massive fire.
Boo, Cromwell, boo.
And finally, there is the rule of Cromwell as the Lord Protector, which is 53 to 58. And then in 1660, the monarchy is finally restored, and the English never have an experiment with democracy again.
Is it really a democracy?
That very much is an autocracy, let's be real.
It was a theocracy, but it was not a monarchy, which some might argue was a step in the direction. We'll see you in 1776, the next time an English person ever spouts something similar to get rid of the monarchy again.
We don't talk about 1776, though. Nothing important happened that year.
Yeah. Yep.
Did something important happen? I don't know. Maybe like something got discovered.
Mm-hmm.
Discovered?
Yeah.
Like freedom!
America!
Fuck yeah!
All right, before we ride away on giant bald eagles, like it's the end of the Lord of the Rings. Let's the personal rule of Charles I. So Charles I begins his personal rule the way any sensible monarch would, by disbanding the legislative branch of his government because it won't approve new taxes for him.
Yeah, he needs more money, of course.
Yep. During this period, he rules England directly by decree, which he can do as long as he doesn't introduce new taxes. So how does he get around this? Why, he simply expands the parameters of existing taxes. As you can imagine, this is a very popular move with the people. It's hot.
Yeah, it's not like people have rebelled over taxes before either.
Yeah, I can't imagine that ever happening.
Yeah. So in order to finance his government the way he wants to, Charles makes one very key mistake in 1635. And this is when he extends the range of the ship money tax. Now, the ship money tax was a levy placed on all the ports of England to pay for the upkeep and repair of the English Navy. Sensible. Fairly simple. He expands this tax to include all towns in England, including those inland.
Because they receive goods from it.
Yeah. To most of the English, this seems like it's a new tax, and thus would require parliamentary approval to exist. Very unpopular. This makes him deeply unpopular and basically makes everyone think that he's acting illegally and unjustly as a king, not just simply acting as a king without parliament, which the kings of England were known to do for decades at a time prior to Charles. Because, fun fact, parliament really only met once every couple of years most of the time. So, for them to go years at a time without being in session was normal for this period.
It's also funny if anyone ever gets a chance, look into how their election system for their parliamentarian for the members of parliament went. It's really kind of funny. There was one county that really only had sheep, and so the landowners had to just kind of show up to vote.
Yep. The second error that he makes is, remember how we mentioned religion is kind of in flux right now in England, and that's why Cromwell gets to be such a overly religious zealot?
or just a Puritan in general.
Yeah.
The Puritans.
Well, during his personal rule, Charles decides to reform the Church of England in order for it to function more efficiently or in the way that he wants it to. The reforms themselves don't actually matter. What matters is that the reforms are headed by William Laud, Archbishop of Canterbury, and Queen Henrietta Maria. Henrietta Maria is a Catholic. So the idea that she is even allowed to breathe the same air as any other living soul on earth has infuriated the Puritans. And now she is consulting the head the vice head of the Church of England on how to run the Church of England.
I mean, that is a bit odd. That's like asking an Orthodox, like an Orthodox priest, give his opinion on Catholic doctrine.
Well, it would be a bit odd. However, the Church of England expressly states that the monarch of England is the head of the Church of England. Now, that monarch is Charles I at this time. However, the Queen Consort is one of the people closest to him and thus has power and say by virtue of being the Queen Consort of England, because it is the monarchy of England that has, that is the head of the church.
Yeah.
So she technically has a right to talk to this man and discuss with him what's going on. William Laud, the Archbishop, is the one who makes the decisions, but she has the right to consult with him.
I just want to know how a Catholic was allowed to marry a Protestant.
Oh, quite simple. Politics.
I'm the king and I say so. That's how.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Continue on. Sorry to bother you.
Strike number 3 for this comes out of all places, Ireland. That's right. The Irish are getting back into the fray here against the king. Namely because, well, Charles appoints the second most evil man in England as the Lord Deputy of Ireland. This man is Thomas Wentworth.
Thomas Wentworth, Lord Deputy of Ireland.
Yes, he's much worse than a loans company.
Oh no.
Wentworth governs Ireland solely with the interests of England in mind. Shocker, I know. But for someone who might not have been a Puritan, I don't have his religious standing, unfortunately. He was pretty puritanical about it. He gives no consideration to the Irish population. He gives no consideration to the rights of the Irish for land. In fact, he actively challenges any non-Englishman in Ireland for the right to own their land.
So he quite literally was an Englishman in Ireland.
Yep. He actively supplanted Irish landowners with English ones. And he attempted to do what Cromwell would do later, which is force all of the Irish to convert to the Church of England. Fun fact, he fails, and the Irish hate him so much that in 1637, he's brought over to help introduce the Book of Common Prayer to Scotland. This goes over so well with the Scottish that they actively riot against the king.
God, you love to see it.
Oh, yep. And this one I know hits so close to home for Colum.
Yep. A national covenant is called in 1638 to demand the removal of this prayer book, which is deemed offensive by the Scots. Now, this call was treated by the Englishmen running Scotland as an attempt to justify a revolution against the king. Because keep in mind, the king is the head of the Church of England. You said the Church of England did something wrong. Therefore, you're saying the king shouldn't be in charge. As you can imagine, the English blow this out of proportion.
What's a slippery slope fallacy? I've never heard of one.
This is typical English colonial practice. Someone said no to you in the politest term possible, therefore you must annihilate them and everyone they have ever loved.
That's usually how it goes.
Yep. In 1639, the Bishop Wars begin at the end of that year as it becomes clear that this is going to be a war and not just civil unrest. 1640, the Bishop War begins in earnest. And so it's called the Bishop Wars because there's several wars in this 2-year span, two of which go from 1640 to 1640. Because the first two Bishop Wars, Charles I loses to the Scots in just the first year. He makes peace, declares war, and is forced to make peace again. He is forced to sign these treaties. He is humiliated militarily and politically, and because of these defeats, he is forced to recall Parliament. Yay.
Jeez, the poor bastard.
His life is going so well right now. In 1641, Parliament executes Wentworth for starting this charade.
Ooh.
And as you can imagine, at this point, Oliver Cromwell must be getting his taste for blood because, dear God, does he never stop. There is, this execution comes about as a coordinated effort by the Irish, the Scots, and the anti-crown English in Parliament. Because, fun fact, despite all of this, Wentworth still has the favor of the English crown.
Wow.
And Parliament kills him because everyone but Charles I hates this man.
That's impressive that you get all of those sects of society together just to hate on one man.
Yeah, just to go after him.
That was the last time the British House was ever unified.
well, keep in mind, in 1641, for the past at least 6 years, this man has been abusing openly at least two of those demographics.
You know you have to be some big asshole to where all of those groups hate you.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, except for the ones that support the crown, but we know how that is.
It's the anti. Yeah. Fun fact: those people were mostly Welsh.
Really?
Yep. As the situation deteriorates, Charles finds that his main power base in the British Isles is Wales, the only place that ever seems to consistently like him.
That
Really?
seems like a miracle in itself.
Yep. Yep. However, Parliament, when they kill Wentworth, they're a little too hasty about it, and the power vacuum he leaves behind sparks what is known as the Ulster Uprising of 1641.
Oh, there it is.
Yep, there it is.
And what this effectively is basically Wentworth had been pressing down on the Irish, like, a cap in a bottle, just slowly increasing the pressure within. Parliament popped the cap off, and all the violent pressure against him sprang forth. All the long-term social, religious, economic oppression that had been implemented against the Irish came together with the lack of central authority after Wentworth's death to basically allow for open rioting. Some 4,000 of the Protestant English usurping settlers were killed. These are the landowners that Wentworth brought in to steal land from the Irish. However, in Parliament, the English claimed that 154,000 God-fearing Puritans were murdered in their homes. An openly absurd number, which Parliament even admitted to making up at the time. It says, that's not the real number. The real number doesn't matter. What matters is that God's people are dying. I'm sorry, are you Jewish?
No. Those are the chosen ones. We are God's people.
Or if you're Mormon, it was the Cherokees.
Yep.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there a group worse than Puritans?
Yeah. Anyway, Charles fights with Parliament over who should intervene in Ireland. Always a good sign. Charles decides to ignore Parliament and intervene in Ireland himself. This does not go well for him, like his other military campaigns. And he is called back to England pretty quickly because in 1642, Oliver Cromwell leads Parliament into revolution. And the first English Civil War begins. The first major battle of this war was the Battle of Edgehill in 1642, which Oliver Cromwell personally wins for Parliament. The battle makes it very obvious that neither side has any sort of long-term logistical planning whatsoever. And this war was largely characterized by sieges and skirmishes, then pitched battles. So when they do fight in the field, winning is everything. And Cromwell doesn't lose in the field.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Why does he have to be a good military leader?
Yeah. So here's where we get the power bases for the two groups. Charles controls Wales, northern and western England, and Ireland, which he gets control of in 1643 after the fighting there finally subsides. Parliament controls South and East England, or as it's known, most of England. That means they control London. That means they control every English port in existence, and they control the English Navy. Or I should say most of the English Navy, because whatever Charles didn't bring with him was with them now.
True.
Now, Charles needs to take London in order to win this war. If he can take London, he can say, I am clearly the King of England. I am clearly running the English government, not the Irish government, not the Welsh government, not the Scottish government, the English government. And you are all usurpers. He never sets foot in London. Because he just can't make it, baby. Oh, God. So Charles does one good thing. Charles fights this war like a discount George Washington, where despite losing every fight he's in, Parliament never destroys his armies. And he holds out for years like this.
It very much does sound like Washington then.
Yeah.
We're not going to win most of our fights.
Yep.
Maybe this is what inspired good old George.
Yep. However, instead of, cornering your enemy in a Carolina port and crushing them, Charles instead decides to meet the parliamentary forces in Marston Moor in 1644. Here, the commanding officer, Oliver Cromwell, is wounded in battle, almost saving history from his existence.
It's never that easy, is it?
Yeah, come on. What kind of deal did he have going on?
Yeah. During the course of the fighting, Charles loses two of his main field armies to Parliament. They are annihilated. This battle causes Parliament to reconsider its military tactics, seeing as how it took Charles doing something he probably shouldn't have and, several years of war to get where they were. And thus, the new model army is formed from 44 to 45. This army makes Parliament far more formidable in the field. This is the beginnings of a professional modern army. What was happening up to this point was effectively people were calling for aid, and the feudal system of just, I have 200 healthy men, I have, 500 rifles, and then people were just throwing things into a hodgepodge together. No, this becomes a organized professional standing army. This is the beginning of what would become the Redcoats that would be fought against during the American Revolution, and what would make the English military the most formidable military force on the planet.
Not the Redcoats, no!
Yeah, this is the dawn of the Redcoats. Another thing we get to thank Oliver Cromwell for.
God damn it.
Yep.
It keeps getting worse.
What a bastard. Someone should really take his head away.
Yeah. Cromwell's victory at Naseby with this new model army in 1645 leads to a string of just domino effect Parliament victories. And Parliament actually corners Charles with the help of the Scots. The Scots actually are the people who captured Charles in Newark, mostly under the understanding that, well, Scotland better contribute something to this war before these Puritans decide to turn their guns on us. And so the Scots capture the king and deliver him to Parliament. Then there's the Second and Third English Wars because, dear God, we can't stop.
There's no stopping this train.
Once they got a taste of blood, they're like, "Oh, it's on."
Yep. The second and third are 1648 and 1650 to 51, respectively. The Second English Civil War began when Charles decided to give religious tolerance to Scotland in exchange for restoring him to the throne. Scots invaded England in July. Scots are defeated at Preston in August. The war is effectively over at this point. And also at this point, Pride's purge is carried out in Parliament. This is where Colonel Thomas Pride eliminated any member of Parliament who had shown loyalty to Charles I over the past, 12 years.
Loyalty gets you nowhere anyways.
Yep. Parliament reconvenes with only its anti-monarchy members and votes overwhelmingly against Charles I and has him killed. Nothing like stacking the court.
It's the easiest way to win, to be fair.
Yep. Executing Charles I turns both Scotland and Ireland against Parliament. Cromwell defeats the Irish in 1649, and Cromwell leads the invasion of Scotland in 1650, where Charles II is crowned King of the Scots by Scotland.
Ooh.
And promptly proves that he's about as good as a military leader as his father.
Yikes.
Charles II is very good as a reformist. He is terrible as a military leader.
I just want to highlight that this was also around the time that my family personally lost a lot of their lands and holding. That's why we skedaddled to America.
Would that be because of what was happening in 1650 or because of what was happening in 1660?
Because of 1650.
Trying to trap them there, aren't I?
Yeah. You got me thinking. It was not 1660. It was 1650.
Yep.
Because we were in control. We had it all.
Jesus Christ.
Yes. So Cromwell annihilates the Scottish army at Dunbar. There is no Scottish army. And the war should be over. Cromwell seems to think so. Everyone seems to think so. However, no one seemed to have told the Scottish people.
Scotland
from the top rope.
Do we need to send a letter to make sure they know? Like, nah, clearly they know. Scotland again over here, like, I didn't hear no bell.
As in, within just a few weeks of the defeat at Dunbar, a second, possibly larger Scottish army is formed and begins to march on London.
Lord Cromwell, a second Scottish army has hit England.
So they just had the two scotches. They took a shot of scotch, and then they just used scotch tape and bandaged themselves up.
Fortunately, they should have taken to the Scotch Guard, but that's another story.
That was invented afterwards, unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they don't make it to London as they are defeated at Worcester in 1651, and Charles II is forced to flee to France, where he will remain for the next 9 years.
Did you say Worcester, or did you mean Worcester?
It's Worcester.
Worcester.
We all have different accents. I'm American. I pronounce it the right way.
Except it's English, so they only pronounce like 4 of the total.
This is the state of Illinois, Justin. We speak American here.
I know. I hate that I taught you that fact.
Worcester.
All right. Anyways, with all of your extra vowels and letters and consonants and everything.
Keep it up. I'm going to start reading Welsh names.
Oh God.
Hey.
The Welsh.
You leave the Welsh out of this. They've had it
Absolutely
for
not.
too
They're being
long.
dragged into this ring. They constitute like 30% of our listeners from the UK. So
Do they really?
Yes, 30%
Yes.
of our UK listeners are from Wales.
I wonder if my buddy Kai listens. I haven't talked to him in a while.
Yeah,
well,
that's
Kai,
fun.
if you're listening, hello, but we're dragging you into the ring.
Yeah.
When we were there, we made him an honorary Illinois
Oh no.
Oh, yeah.
Illinois citizen.
Nice. So anyway, Charles spends the rest of Cromwell's time in existence living in France, a place no puritanical Englishman will ever dare set foot.
That's fair.
For fear of dying by contact with the ground. The English civil wars effectively end with Cromwell in control of the entirety of the British Isles. During these wars, 2.5% of the civilian population of the British Isles are killed.
Wow.
Most of them by Cromwell. Or armies under the personal and direct command of Cromwell at locations where Cromwell was the field commander.
Explains a lot.
So they quite literally, when you say at his hand, you quite literally mean at his hand.
Yes.
If he could have invisible
but
hand
actually
commander.
Fire the bullet.
If he
I'm sure he did. I guarantee he did.
Oh, I guarantee you he did not fire the bullet for everyone in the population, but basically it's not his subordinates that go do this. It's every fight where he is the commanding officer.
Oh, I know. He's not the one personally executing all of them. Yeah. But you don't think a sadistic man like that wouldn't take pleasure in it? Huff the smoke from his like round bore barrel.
Oh, I'm sure he enjoyed it when it came to the priests.
I guarantee you, if he could have done it
he was huffing that gun smoke.
He
like
would
crazy.
have done it.
Yeah.
Oh no!
Yeah,
the one thing I was surprised I didn't come across in all this was a list of churches burned by him, because I'm pretty sure he would have done that as well.
I just thought of an awful remark that I will tell you guys off camera because I don't want to start a political debate.
All right. Anyway,
do it.
Cromwell becomes Lord Protector in 1651 by a very legitimate parliament. Wink, wink. Rules the British Isles as an absolute monarch. Disbands Parliament in 1655 because they wanted to, do their job and reform the Constitution. Installs a new Parliament in 1657 and puts on a whole show about, like I'm talking like, Julius Caesar Shakespearean play style of, we shall crown you king, sir. You are the only man alive worthy of it. No, the monarchy, it's too much. No man should ever have that power. Let us name you God for life. Okay.
Not once.
If you're really forcing it upon me, I wouldn't call me king though. Just Lord Protector for life. That's all you need to call me.
He already had that title, and he forced the entirety of Parliament to reaffirm that title as an oath of loyalty to him.
He refused the crown not once, not twice, but thrice was it offered to him, and he denied it.
Oh,
yep.
Fucking hate Cromwell.
Yes. My fellow Englishmen and all you other non-people from the rest of these islands. That would be how he would begin that speech. Let's be honest. There is no my fellow Romans.
Just British and everything else.
My fellow Puritans.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm surprised we haven't gone into a certain other territory with that, seeing as how the first monster I ever made you fight in D&D was a Puritan.
I don't remember it. That wasn't me.
So Aaron, that wasn't a campaign you were a part of. We fought
that was the first,
but I kept saying the Puritans. I had a personal vendetta against the Puritans.
Yeah, so a Puritan is a D&D monster. Is effectively a flying murder goat, and a Puritan is basically Cromwell,
a religious fanatic.
I can see the resemblance.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
All the Puritanism isn't around anymore, right? Right? We're gonna get
There are some sects that are still active. Yeah, it's not quite as prominent as it was, but unfortunately, it does still happen.
okay. So they
But
don't matter then. Got it.
no,
I'm kidding. I'm
But
kidding.
we shouldn't
I know.
diss too
Not
much
yet.
on a Christian-based faith purely based on the large amount of Christians out there. But
I mean,
we
we
just
know
want to
fighting
highlight
each
how
They
awful.
fight each other constantly.
Yeah.
Have you not seen anything since Lutheran?
To be fair, if they were
I got
fighting
95 thesis, but the church ain't one.
Yeah.
Also, to be fair, the Puritans don't exactly have a good legacy in general.
Yeah. So anyway, Cromwell gets briefly replaced by his son Robbie Cromwell.
Robbie.
Danger, Robinson Cromwell, danger.
Robbie.
Yeah. So Robert Cromwell loses power almost immediately, and by 1660, Charles II is restored to the throne.
Okay, you know it's bad when the government goes, all right, let's just get that guy's son back in here. Like, just,
well, here's the thing.
That's like the IT version of just starting back over.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It's been effectively a decade of Cromwell being a more tyrannical monarch than Charles I ever was. So all those people who were fighting that war for, a more tolerant monarchy and a more active and, shall we say, free-handed parliament, which were, by the way, all the people left alive after the purge, were deeply unsatisfied with how the government was currently going. And, it's better the devil you know than risk, drafting up the next Oliver Cromwell.
That is true, I guess. The devil you know is a good...
Yeah. And this begins the, English Reformation, which lasts from 1660 to 1689. And, with this reinstatement comes the ban on Catholics in the monarchy at all, which was one of the 3 issues with Charles I's personal rule that got him overthrown. The other 2 being taxes and oppressing the Scots and Irish. Yep. Yeah, it's not till 1776 that the taxes become a real problem again.
The American national anthem plays loudly in the background.
Bum, 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 bum.
Why do I hear an eagle?
I also weirdly think I hear a Harley Davidson and some guy like shouting.
Look, it's just the end of
Wait,
Return.
just they find oil on your property?
Except
Oh,
Mary's
no!
got an American flag. Look, the Eagles are coming.
Oh no!
That's exactly how America has invaded every country for oil. It's on the back of eagles.
Hey, excuse me, sir. I think we found oil here. It's like, wait, do you hear that? Oh no!
Yeah.
I heard you need some freedom.
Apache helicopters come over the horizon. Yeah, that's right. The British use boats. We use the sky.
Okay,
And,
I think that's a great point for us to wrap up.
That's the right way to wrap it up here. This has been the Cromwell Uprising. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us basically go over the same material twice, but from, different lenses. That's always fun to do because the history does change a little bit depending on whether you're doing this, timeline style versus the life of Oliver Cromwell.
Also, definitely everybody should do a quick deep dive into what happened to Cromwell's head, because there's a few centuries where it just goes missing after it was put on a spike on like Parliament, or is it Westminster? One of
Westminster. It's outside Westminster because he was buried in the Abbey, so they put
That's
him on a
right.
pike inside the hall to warn people about hubris.
To modern day, there is a statue outside of Parliament of Oliver Cromwell, and it looks directly towards Westminster Abbey, where it is facing, and I kid you not, a bust of Charles I.
Why did they make a statue for fucking Cromwell?
I don't know, but we got off topic. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.